Tonight, a major new spending announcement aimed at getting more people into skilled trades.
To build big, as you ask the country to do, we're going to be able, we need people, smart people, young people.
The $6 billion plan to train 100,000 new workers to build those major projects.
There is a big need for trades right now.
Where the spring economic update leaves Canadians. At Issue is standing by. Health Canada approves the first generic version of Ozempic.
The fact that there are generics available, I think, can be nothing but a good thing.
The cost difference for Canadians. And amid a rash of home invasions in Toronto, some are taking matters into their own hands.
It's absolutely horrifying. We really have a problem.
The lengths homeowners are going to protect themselves.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. The Liberal government has unveiled its financial path forward, outlining billions of dollars in new spending, much of it with an eye to increasing this country's economic independence. The details were revealed in the spring economic update. A key goal, building up the skilled trade sector with up to 100,000 new workers. Those workers, young Canadians. This plan is critical for Mark Carney to accomplish his goal of building major projects, and it has a price tag to match, $6 billion. Ashley Burke now with how the government intends to accomplish the task and where that money's coming from.
So here we go.
There you go.
A year into Mark Carney's mandate, new measures to build up Canada's economy as turbulence builds around the world.
To build big, as you ask the country to do, we're going to be able, we need people, smart people, young people.
This spring economic update features new incentives to try and attract tens of thousands of people to get into skilled trades.
Big measures for apprenticeships, making young Canadians as part of this.
The plan to invest $6 billion over 5 years.
As part of a nationwide effort to recruit, to train, and hire 80,000 to 100,000 new skilled trade workers.
The new incentives include $10,000 per apprentice to support employers to hire, train, and retain them, $400 a week during their mandatory in-class technical training, and a one-time perk.
A $5,000 bonus when you complete your Red Seal certification.
Another option, the government offering to fully fund skilled worker apprentices if they join the military part-time.
We've been really focused on the question of how we not only attract people to the trades, but I think importantly, as union trainers and colleges have indicated, how we get people through the training.
The push for more trade workers as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to cause uncertainty, stacked on top of that, instability from the war in the Middle East.
Canada is doing quite well relative to our peers in the G7.
Thanks to a resilient economy and surging oil prices, the deficit is $67 billion. That's more than $11 billion lower than projected and expected to drop to about $53 billion in 5 years. The government on track to balance the operating budget by 2029.
This Liberal Prime Minister has now doubled the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind.
The Conservative leader taking aim at Carney's spending.
Everyone thought it would be impossible to outspend the reckless Justin Trudeau, but then this new Liberal Prime Minister came along and said, "Hold my champagne, Mr. Speaker."
The government's update includes more than $37 billion in new spending, but the finance minister insists that the government is acting in a way that is fiscally prudent and says that he's going to keep that up, calling this a serious time.
So, Ashley, not a lot of new in here to help Canadians with cost of living, though.
Yeah, Adrienne, nothing big that hasn't been announced before, but starting in January, the government is cutting how much employees and businesses have to contribute to the Canadian pension plan. That's expected to save people $133 a year if they make $70,000.
All right, that is Ashley Burke in Ottawa. The government is clearly hoping this new funding for skilled trades will ramp up training and hiring, but is it the solution to low certification numbers? Caroline Bargout speaks to instructors, students, and experts about what they're seeing and what they need.
After spending 15 years as a chef, Melody Watkins is making a change. She's now in her second year training to be an electrician and loves it.
I picked trades because there is a big need for trades right now. And I knew that I would have a reliable job, and it's something that would be more of a career instead of just a passing interest.
Ottawa says Canada will need 1.4 million additional tradespeople by 2033. If nothing changes, it predicts the country will be short 20,000 people a year. That's why it's now offering billions in incentives for students and employers.
A lot of existing trades workers are approaching the end of their careers, and they will be retiring over the next few years. So this is a step in the right direction, but we still face a real challenge on the skilled labor supply front.
At this BC school, instructors and students say the plan to give those in technical training $400 a week and $5,000 for completing the Red Seal certification is a step in the right direction.
Across Canada, we have a problem with apprentices failing to complete their apprenticeship and obtain their Red Seal endorsements. And a lot of that has to do with the high cost of living.
But once you get, further along, taking the break for school can sometimes be quite a bit of a pay cut.
In 2024, less than 20% of apprentices completed their programs within the expected duration, according to Statistics Canada.
That living money may not necessarily address some of the exam anxieties and learning challenges that they have getting through to completion. So it's not the end of the story, but it is very helpful.
This is the last lab for these students before they go out into the working world. The federal government now hoping there's tens of thousands more like them. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Vancouver.
Next, let's go to Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton. So, Rosie, can we cut through the new spending a little bit and talk about the message this update is meant to send to Canadians?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Adrienne, that the global economy is still very unstable and the government has to be alive to that reality. That's in part how it's justifying more spending in order to try to help Canadians and to invest in programs for the economy of the future. But what we didn't see here are any major new affordability measures to help Canadians. Those have actually largely been announced already, right? Suspending the gas tax and that grocery benefit that doesn't go into effect until July. And beyond that, the finance minister says the government's response is pretty limited. This is very much an update as opposed to a mini budget, which we've seen in the past in spite of this new spending. And it very much sets the stage for what's to come in the fall while, trying to reassure Canadians to some extent that the government is on the right path here.
Okay, so what about the politics here, though? This is, after all, it's a newly strengthened Liberal government.
That's right. And this is the first economic document the government is tabling as a majority. So there's no question that these measures are going to go ahead, even with the criticism from the opposition. And there was a lot of it, namely that the government is leaning too much on deficit spending or that it's not targeting things for Canadians who are struggling right now. A couple things to watch for. The spending review the government has undertaken isn't really reflected in this document. So there may be more savings from cuts to come, which we would see in the fall in the budget, and then delivering on all of this. And that is really the fundamental challenge, Adrienne, for the government in the months ahead. Lots of big ideas here, but Canadians will have to see them and feel them if the government really wants to succeed.
All right. Thank you, Rosie. We will see you again just a little bit later in the show for a special edition of At Issue. Now to a developing story. Health Canada has approved the first generic version of the brand name drug Ozempic, making this country the first in the G7 to do so. Health reporter Christine Bierak joins us now. So, Christine, we already know this drug is incredibly popular. This feels significant.
This is big. The first generic Ozempic approved in Canada, which should mean the price for this blockbuster drug will start dropping. It's estimated 3 million Canadians are taking Ozempic. It costs about $225 to $300 per pen. That can last a week or up to a month. And provincial insurance systems have been looking for ways to cover this drug for more people. And this is a global first among major economies, ahead of the US, Japan, even the European Union. So what we're talking about is generic semaglutide. Health Canada says it's approved a product that's being made by an Indian company that's equivalent to Ozempic. It meets the same standards for safety, efficacy, and quality, and it's approved for weekly treatment of type 2 diabetes. And semaglutide is the same drug in a higher dose that's used for weight loss. And we did speak with a doctor who's excited about this news, but also has concerns on the weight loss front.
The fact that there are generics available, I think, can be nothing but a good thing because the cost comes down. But there still needs to, just because it's lower cost doesn't mean automatically anybody should use it without any guidance and any advice.
So when will it be available? How much will it cost?
So patients will need to wait weeks or perhaps even months before it starts showing up in pharmacies. No price was announced. We spoke with a pharmacist who said the first generic usually costs 85% of the brand name. So if a pen was $225, it would now cost around $190. Health Canada is also reviewing other generic semaglutide submissions, so there may be more decisions coming, and more competition could make it even cheaper. But officials are stressing that generic versions will be actively monitored. But it's coming in the weeks and months, and prices should drop. So this is something many patients have been waiting for.
All right, Christine Birak, thank you.
You're welcome.
Former FBI Director James Comey is facing a new indictment tonight, the second set of charges in less than a year. This time, it's over a photo he posted on social media. Chris Reyes now with why U.S. officials say that photo posed a serious threat to U.S. President Donald Trump.
A new allegation against former FBI Director James Comey.
Threatening the life of the President of the United States will never be tolerated by the Department of Justice.
The DOJ filing fresh charges over this photo Comey posted on Instagram last May. Seashells on a North Carolina beach arranged as 86, 47. 47 referring to Trump being the 47th U.S. president, while 86 is a slang term which can mean get rid of something or someone or to kill. At the time, Donald Trump accused Comey of knowing exactly what it meant.
That meant assassination.
Comey took down the post the same day and issued an apology, saying he assumed it was a political message, not a violent one. These charges come just months after another case against Comey was dismissed by a federal judge. Among the allegations, lying to Congress over the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election.
Well, they're back. Nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary, so let's go.
The new charges revive pressing concerns that Trump is using the DOJ to go after his enemies.
The acting attorney general should take the message and quit allowing the Department of Justice to be used as a tool for retribution by President Trump.
But FBI Director Kash Patel seemed to address the optics by defending his investigators.
They call the balls and strikes in the field as they see fit pursuant to the facts of the case and the law. They took that information and made a presentment to a grand jury, and that grand jury returned a 2-count indictment against James Comey.
If convicted, Comey could face up to 10 years in prison. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
King Charles was hosted for a state dinner at the White House tonight following his historic address to Congress. His speech highlighted friendly ties and touched on some of the irritants between the allies. Katie Nicholson shows us what was said and how it is landing.
American pomp and splendor under cloudy skies that may have made King Charles feel right at home.
What a beautiful British day this is.
U.S. President Donald Trump's admiration of the king on full display during this state visit, second only perhaps to that of his mother.
I also remember her saying very clearly, Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute. It's my mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it?
But Trump's relationship with the UK notably less cordial, especially after the British Prime Minister resisted being pulled into the war with Iran. This visit seen as a balm to soothe those jagged edges in the centuries-old relationship. Underscored in the King's historic address to Congress, even quoting Trump himself.
The bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It is irreplaceable and unbreakable.
But there were specific points to make on thorny issues. The king reminded Congress of the power of NATO after the 9/11 attacks.
We stood with you then, and we stand with you now.
He celebrated the importance of trade and made a forceful stand on the environment and on a war that has vexed Trump.
Unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
Topics perhaps not every head of state would feel comfortable raising.
The king also is aware of how much affection that this president has for him and for the royal family. And I think he is willing to take just a little bit extra step to convey a very subtle message.
There are hopes long after the fanfare the king's words resonate well beyond this visit and mend the rifts in this special relationship.
The visit isn't over yet. Tonight, a state dinner, and then the king and queen are heading next to New York.
And Katie, lots of talk tonight about what was in the king's speech, but also what wasn't. No direct mention of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and I was at a hearing this morning with Jeffrey Epstein survivors who had asked for a private meeting with King Charles. After all, his brother was stripped of that royal title over his associations with the sexual predator. Survivors disappointed in the king's decision not to meet. But Buckingham Palace says one part of his speech about supporting victims of some of the ills that so tragically exist in both our societies today, that did include those survivors. Adrienne, it's vague, but it is an acknowledgement.
All right, Katie Nicholson in Washington tonight. A day after receiving Iran's latest peace proposal, Donald Trump says Tehran has reached out to U.S. officials. In a social media post, Trump claims Iran informed Washington that they are in a state of collapse and that they want to open the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation. Iran has proposed reopening the strait in return for an end to the war and setting aside discussions on its nuclear program for a later time, a proposal which reportedly does not satisfy Trump. And amid a global energy crisis triggered by the war, the United Arab Emirates says it is leaving OPEC, a cartel of the world's leading oil producers. The UAE says its decision to end its 60-year membership reflects the country's long-term economic vision. OPEC coordinates oil production and has considerable sway over global energy prices. The UAE has been critical of OPEC's quotas, calling them too low, and some analysts say the UAE's exit weakens the organization's control over the global oil market. But there won't be an immediate impact on prices as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Former Dances with Wolves actor Nathan Chasinghorse is sentenced to life in a U.S. prison for sexual assault.
This whole ordeal has been a recurring nightmare.
What it could mean for his accusers in this country, next. In Toronto, home invasions are on the rise.
It's absolutely horrifying.
How some homeowners are taking action, plus. A night out with an unexpected ending.
1 second I was there, next second I was in the hole. It happened so fast.
The moment this Winnipeg woman was swallowed up by the ground below her. We're back in 2. Two children have died in as many days after falling from apartment buildings. On Sunday, a 6-year-old girl fell from the 28th floor of this complex north of Toronto. Police say the fall doesn't appear suspicious. And in Ottawa, an 8-year-old boy also reportedly died under similar circumstances on Monday. Both incidents are under investigation. And condolences are pouring in tonight for an on-duty Ontario provincial police officer killed in a motorcycle crash last night.
At this point in the investigation, it does appear to be a single motor vehicle collision.
It happened on Highway 401 in Cobourg. 33-year-old Sergeant Brandon Malcolm was attached to the force's specialized motorcycle unit. Investigators are appealing to anyone with dash cam footage of the incident to please come forward. There is reaction tonight after former Dances with Wolves actor Nathan Chasinghorse was sentenced to life in prison for sexually assaulting Indigenous women and girls in the U.S. He faces charges here in Canada, too, ones examined by the Fifth Estate in 2023. Now Mark Kelly looks at what is next in those cases.
This is the Tsuut'ina First Nation southwest of Calgary. Many here were closely following the sentencing of Nathan Chasinghorse. The Dances with Wolves actor and self-proclaimed medicine man visited the reserve often, dating back almost 20 years, and left a string of sexual assault allegations involving minors behind him.
That web of abuse.
Those allegations weren't limited to Canada. Complaints from 3 women in the U.S. turned into 13 convictions. On Monday, he was given a life sentence.
Guilty of sexual assault with a minor.
Corinna Leon Lacroix was just 14 years old when she says Chasing Horse assaulted her.
For me, this whole ordeal has been a recurring nightmare, a constant reopening of scars I thought had finally begun to heal.
You preyed on these women's trust.
Chasing Horse attended community powwows across Canada and the U.S. for years, and that's where his victim said he used his status as a spiritual healer to exploit young girls.
It's you and a group of other students in that room.
Yeah, and it was mostly girls.
Like Nicole Big Crow, who said he sexually assaulted her 3 times in Sutina.
And you were 15?
I was only 15, yeah.
A Fifth Estate investigation revealed in 2011, Sutina elder Marina Crane wrote a blog post warning people on the reserve Chasing Horse was a predator. Crane traveled to the Las Vegas courtroom for his sentencing.
I did not do these things.
How he stood there, stoic, not a tear, no shaking, nothing, just arrogance, just pure arrogance.
Chasing Horse was charged with sexual assault in BC in 2023. The BC Prosecution Service paused the case during his U.S. trial. Police in Sutina laid 9 charges against him in 2023 involving 3 women, including Nicole Big Crow. Crane says what he did to women was unforgivable, but his victims have found strength in each other.
They were on the phone for 2 hours talking about the sentencing and how they felt.
Lawyers for Chasing Horse are expected to appeal his sentence. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Toronto.
And a reminder, there is help available for anyone experiencing sexual violence. You can find a list of crisis lines and other support services at endingviolencecanada.org. If you are in immediate danger, of course, call 911. With the royal visit underway, we look at Donald Trump's fascination with King Charles.
He described him as a fighter. He said he'd been very impressed by the way he's handled his role as king. He said he's a great guy.
After the break, Rosie's here with a special edition of At Issue. Hey there.
Hey, Adrian, tonight we're obviously going to talk about that big spring economic update.
The dream of Canada is alive and well, Mr. Speaker.
The Liberals say Canada is in a better than expected position. The Conservatives, they disagree. What does it mean for you? Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, and Aaron Wary will join me to break it down.
A 21-year-old man pleaded guilty to plotting an attack at one of Taylor Swift's concerts in Vienna in 2024. His arrest led to all of Swift's Vienna shows being canceled as a precaution. Authorities said the man pledged allegiance to ISIS. He also faces terror-related charges for planning attacks in the Middle East and faces up to 20 years in prison. Well, home invasions are on the rise in Toronto, and some residents are going to great lengths to secure their properties. Angelina King shows us one homeowner who's spending thousands of dollars just to feel safe.
In the middle of the night in Toronto, violent intruders threatening murder.
I'll kill you. I'll kill you.
Over car keys.
It's absolutely horrifying. We really have a problem, and it needs to be addressed before things get much worse.
In 2024, Toronto saw 149 home invasions, a 10-year high. That dropped to 93 last year, but police say this year they're on track to see more home invasions than 2025. Riley Mulvihill says she's taken matters into her own hands, spending around $20,000 on security, adding cameras, metal bars to windows, reinforcing doors, creating a panic room, and this. An alarm triggered if anyone steps foot on her property at night. After a previous security incident, her house was already souped up with security, including with window film, which makes glass much harder to break.
It absolutely is what stopped them, slowed them down.
Window film installers say it's tough to keep up with demand.
It's gone up over the last 2 years, 70%.
Julian Herzberg says window film can buy homeowners an extra 4 to 5 minutes of valuable time.
These guys that are trying to break into homes know they have a very limited time to get in and out.
This Toronto City Councillor represents neighborhoods hit the hardest.
The area is really on alert and very concerned, and some of them have hired private security to patrol neighborhoods.
Police say they're deploying more officers to target neighborhoods, the chief saying the crimes are often committed by youth.
We need real accountability, real deterrence through the justice system, real reform of accountability when offenders are apprehended.
As for Mulvihill,
I feel like we have a better system in place to address another situation, but I'm sick to my stomach.
She says the added security can only bring so much comfort. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
In the breakdown tonight, Donald Trump hosts King Charles. But first, Rosie's here with a special edition of At Issue.
At Issue tonight, Ottawa's spring economic update. The finance minister says Canada is in a better than expected position, driven by surging oil prices and a resilient economy.
This is an historic moment, Mr. Speaker. Generations will look back at this Prime Minister, this government, this Parliament to say that we have been there for them.
But the opposition says that doesn't stack up with reality.
This Liberal Prime Minister has now doubled the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind, from $31 billion to $65 billion.
So what does the spring fiscal update mean for you? What does it tell us about the government's approach? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down. A special edition of At Issue. Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, and in for Chantal Hébert, Aaron Weary is here tonight. Thank you all for being here. I was on the Globe and Mail website, Andrew, and I saw you had posted a reaction video, so I already have a sense of what you're going to say. But give me your thoughts on what you made of this document, which happily for me anyway, wasn't a mini budget. It was really an update.
Well, you asked what does it tell us? Not much. I mean, we're still waiting to find out what this government's economic vision is and how it differs from the old government that it supposedly replaced. What we do know is we're facing a growth crisis. We have been for many years in this country, where the government is now projecting growth of 1.7% per year, which is half what we grew even in the 80s, a third of what we grew in the 50s and 60s, and seems entirely unconcerned about this. We're facing a rising debt to GDP ratio, especially when you combine it with the provinces. The government is not only unconcerned about this, but presents a kind of a cack-handed way of explaining it, where if you subtract the CPP and the QPP, we have a debt to GDP ratio of only 10%. Well, you can't actually use pension funds to pay off your debts. It's a completely bogus comparison. But this is the thing. It's the same complacency. It's the same very top-down, government-directed, state-run pension investment funds and this kind of thing. There's really not any sort of new development policy and no sense of the seriousness of the situation we're in.
Well, to play devil's advocate, the skills training money and attempt to try to get more people into the trade seems significant in order to get the economy moving in the direction the government wants to. I mean, whether it works or not, I don't know, but I'll let you weigh in quickly, Andrew. Yeah.
I think that's worthwhile. I'm not saying that's bad policy, but that's not going to lift a $3.3 trillion economy off the floor.
Okay, Althea.
I'm more concerned with the things that weren't in the budget that I would have expected to see.
The update, yes.
Or perhaps I was looking for signals to see in which direction the government was going. So first of all, if we're going to make good on this NATO commitment, and I have no reason to doubt the government, but 3.5% of GDP is a lot of money. It's $87.5 billion. What are we spending on, and where is that money? Because there was none of it really described in this update. So I think that there are questions to be asked about that. I'm also quite concerned about the nods to social programs. The government, the Prime Minister, we just heard Minister Champagne talking about being there for Canadians. The Prime Minister talks about childcare, talks about health care. They're letting the bilateral health care agreements lapse on mental health addiction, mental services, health addiction, long-term care, home care. On the child care, there is no new money for child care. They're letting an infrastructure fund lapse, which means that there's no capital funding for new child care spaces, which could mean, I've spoken to child advocates right after the budget ended, they're worried that this program basically will collapse if there's no new injection. It's certainly not going to get to the universality that we heard former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland talk about. And on pharmacare, there's not a mention of pharmacare. So all that money that the government has set aside, about $600 million that Nova Scotia wants, that Newfoundland and Labrador want, the government is not signaling an intention to do anything on that. And when you talk about building Canada strong, you know, how can you have a country where only 17% of Canadians are covered? And, you know, it's great if you have diabetes in the Yukon, you have access to medication. But if you have diabetes in Nova Scotia, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have your leg amputated because the government doesn't want to spend the money there. So I think there's going to be some interesting conversations to be had in the next couple of months about the direction the government is headed.
Aaron, what are your first thoughts?
I mean, I guess my first thought is the good news is they got through today without the finance minister resigning, which, as we all know, is not a given necessarily on update days anymore. That said, I think it's interesting that there's a return to this sort of fight over deficit spending. The Conservatives have really doubled down on that idea, you know, referring to credit card budgets. But I think to Althea's point, the other half of that is the government does say they're cutting back on operational spending. And it's not quite clear how all of that is going to play itself out. So I think the government could be facing sort of you know, two opposing forces, right? One where they have to defend higher deficits, and the other where they have to defend some of their spending choices. I think at least on the deficit spending, you know, they have to be banking on the idea that, to Andrew's point, that some of this spending is going to boost economic growth at least a bit, or that there's at least going to be, you know, tangible signs of progress. You know, in the form of things actually being built. But I do think the sleeper issue here for them is how Canadians are going to react to some of the spending choices they're going to have to make.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Conservatives have a point, Andrew, about the deficit spending, but economists would say this is also not the time to cut back because of the instability in the world right now.
Well, there's short-term and long-term. The short-term fluctuations of the economy are really relatively minor compared to this long-term, decades-long decline we've seen. When you cannot grow faster than 1.5, 1.6% per year, you think it's a good year if it grows 1.7, you're not going to be able to finance the kind of major defense buildup we're seeing. You're certainly not going to be able to finance the aging of the population, which is primarily a problem for the provinces, but problems for the provinces ultimately also become the federal government's problems. Sure. So we have long-term fiscal needs that the only way we can address them is with faster growth, and we've got nothing in the pipeline to actually make the economy grow faster.
Did you see in the document, though, Althea, a recognition from the government that it is juggling a bunch of unknowns at the same time as it's trying to do these different things with the economy, and that's sort of the challenge?
I guess a little of column A and a little of column B. To Andrew's point, I do think we know what the government's direction is. They really believe that the investments that they're making, facilitating and in some cases direct financial investments in these major projects is going to send Canada on a path where the economy goes stronger. I do think, though, and maybe this is a little bit to Aaron's point as well, that kind of the sleeper issue in this document is really kind of what happens with CUSMA. It's mentioned 6 times in the document, but it's not really mentioned as to, like, if this happens, then we have a plethora of programs that we're going to release. There's a little nod to a beefed up EI, but that's basically it. And, you know, the economy could look drastically different 6 months from now, depending on what happens. And with the president's ever escalating threats and the way he's recalculating tariffs, I do think there's a lot of uncertainty in this document, and it doesn't really address that part.
Is there anything reassuring for Canadians in the document, Aaron?
You know, look, I think the government is pretty sure that it's on the right path and believes that it's got a bunch of things moving forward that are going to show fruit. You know, the idea of the major projects moving forward and the idea that that's going to, you know, come to fruition sooner rather than later. I think, though, Althea's right that there's a lot of short-term instability, obviously, facing this government. Not only CUSMA, but you know, the entire situation with Iran, which let us not forget has still not been resolved. So I think short term there's a ton of instability, and long term I'm interested to see where the discussion goes on fiscal policy writ large. I thought there was an interesting report from the C.D. Howe Institute a few weeks ago that said, hey, if you're going to finance all this big defense spending, you're going to have to look at not only slowing the growth of non-defense spending, but you might have to look at raising the GST by a couple points. Suffice it to say, no politician has leapt up to claim that idea yet. But I think that's, you know, sort of the long-term picture that I'm interested to see how that develops.
Last 30 to you, Andrew.
Well, we can certainly talk about raising the GST. We could also talk about what the government claims to be talking about, which is we're spending less to invest more. At this point, we kind of have to take their word for it. There are these murky things about, oh, look, this curve shows that operating spending will be in balance some years from now. We're not going to tell you how we're defining operating spending, but trust us, if you delve into the details, it'll come out in the wash. A lot of these things are definitionally dodgy. We saw that under the Trudeau government. Things get defined as capital spending that may or may not be capital spending. And even if it is capital spending, not all capital spending actually generates higher growth. A lot of military procurement, for example, is capital spending, but it's basically detracts from growth. You're shifting away from things that make people's incomes grow to things that help defend the country. That's necessary, but we shouldn't mistake that for economic stimulus.
Well, maybe they're saving all these answers for us for the fall budget. Perhaps that's what's happening.
Next time.
Thank you all. Yeah, that's right. Thank you all very much for coming in on a Tuesday. Appreciate it. Nice to see you in person, too. That's at issue on The National. Now, back to Adrian in Toronto.
Thanks, Rosie. Coming up, presidential feelings for a sitting monarch. Why Donald Trump has such fondness for the royals.
He wants to be kingly. He thinks of himself as deserving of that kind of respect.
Plus, can this royal visit help smooth over cracks in a historic alliance? Next.
President Trump is a huge royalist.
Despite friction between the U.S. and the U.K., there's open affection, even warmth, from Donald Trump towards King Charles.
My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it?
On his first official state visit to the U.S. as monarch, Trump rolls out the red carpet. Eli Glasner looks at the possible origins of the U.S. president's embrace of the royal family.
The president and the king. At first glance, it's hard to imagine two more different people. Trump, the rabble-rousing real estate developer turned politician with a reputation for saying the unsayable, even when it comes to Britain's prime minister.
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Then there's King Charles, born into a literal palace and a life of privilege and protocol. And yet, when asked about Charles, Trump's tone changes, describing the king as a friend, a brave and great man.
I think he represents the country so well. I've watched. He's such an elegant gentleman.
At Windsor Castle, the king commented on their unusual friendship.
I cannot help but wonder what our forebears from 1776 would make of this friendship today.
So what explains this surprising bromance, and could it help the UK mend relations? Robert Hardman is the author of a new book about Queen Elizabeth. How does President Trump feel about King Charles?
President Trump is a huge royalist. I went to see him 4 months ago when I was writing my book.
Hardman says Trump spoke quite warmly about the king.
He described him as a fighter. He said he'd been very impressed by the way he's handled his role as king. He said he's a great guy.
This is far from Trump's first brush with the royal family. He boasted of being the first U.S. president to be invited for 2 state visits.
This is truly one of the highest honors of my life.
It's more difficult to discern the king's feelings about Trump.
The royals are always very careful not to show any sort of, personal views on politicians.
But he points out the king pulled out all the stops, from the drink selection.
Trump doesn't even drink, but I mean, they were still made sure they chose brandy from a vintage of, I think it was the year of Queen Trump's mother's birth.
To another presidential first, the carriage procession.
Presidents have never previously been allowed carriage processions through the streets because the Secret Service won't allow it. They say it's too much of a security risk. So for this one, this visit, the King arranged a carriage procession through Windsor Park.
In fact, Hardman thinks King Charles' connection to Canada,
The true north is indeed strong and free,
helped quell all the talk of the 51st state, when the author reminded Trump of King Charles' position.
And again, he reflected. He said, "Well, do they still take the king seriously?" And I said, "Yeah, the King of Canada is the King of Canada." And he sort of reflected and went, "Well, yeah, I guess that's not going to change in 3.5 years."
So where does all this royal affection stem from? Nina Burley, the author of The Trump Women, traces it back to Trump's mother, Mary Ann MacLeod.
That is Donald's rosebud.
Mary Ann grew up in a small village in Scotland.
There was a connection to the British aristocratic class on that island. There was a castle, and she would sort of stand outside the castle and look into it, the fisherman's daughter.
After immigrating to the U.S. and marrying Fred Trump, then came the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in 1953.
Trump has written about this in his book. His mother literally did not get up from the television for like 48 hours.
And she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family.
Mary Ann, who began her life in America as a maid for the rich, instilled in her son the same longing
of wanting to be that kind of aristocratic family, even though they weren't.
Expressed in everything from Trump's gold leaf decor to his friendship with Charles.
He wants to be kingly. He thinks of himself as deserving of that kind of respect, but also the ornate and the trappings of royalty.
And this is far from the first time Britain has used the crown to mend fences.
It's 70 years ago. It's the Suez Crisis in 1956, when Britain was, together with France and Israel, had a disastrous attempt to annex the Suez Canal.
With America worried the invasion would further destabilize the region, relations between the U.S. and the U.K. were at a low point. 10 months later, Britain sent the Queen.
It was a triumph. When she got to Washington, ticker tape parade in New York. She went to an American football match, and by the end, the dial was reset and everything was back to normal.
And Hardman points out the King's current visit was in the books long before relations between Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer cooled due to lack of support for the war in Iran.
There's an outfit called the Royal Visits Committee, which sort of meets in private, in secret, in London every 6 months. And they sort of look at the long-term map about, right, who needs to go where? And the monarch going to the USA in 2026 was always going to happen.
But that doesn't mean the King doesn't have a role to play.
The King is a public servant. He goes where he's told and advised by his ministers. They want him to come because they know that he can cut through at a political, cultural, social, media level and actually show the relationship between the UK and the US is multi-layered and actually runs very much deeper than a lot of people think.
In his address to the joint session of the U.S. Congress today, King Charles reiterated the shared history of the two countries, calling the relationship one of the most consequential partnerships. Well, coming up, this is different. A Winnipeg woman abruptly plunges into the ground.
1 second I was there, next second I was in the hole.
Not unhappy about this, how she got in and out of this bizarre situation. Next, in our moment. So this poor soul is Christine Keelback in a bit of a sticky situation, although a very good sport about it. Just moments before this picture was taken, she was plunging into a hole on her Winnipeg street. So 1 second she was there, and the next she was up to her armpits in the ground. So it pretty much had to be our moment tonight.
I stepped back a few steps onto the boulevard and boom. 1 second I was there, next second I was in the hole. It happened so fast. The horrified look of my friend's face sort of indicated something was going on. Any pressure I put on the perimeter of the hole caused the soil to fall in. I said, we've got to call 911. It's cold in a hole. I was thinking, how long is this gonna take? And the Winnipeg Fire Service was there in 10 minutes. It was quite the setup. When I was out, it was 40 minutes. If I had been hurt, it would have been a very much different situation, but I wasn't hurt at all. I'm just standing there in a hole. It's so ridiculous. I was talking to my neighbors and waving. One neighbor asked me if I'd like a snack. I felt like Pooh Bear stuck in Rabbit's hole. If something of mine was to go viral, why couldn't it be a significant contribution to my community? But no, I fell in a hole.
Okay, you are a champ. What the heck was going on? Not a sinkhole, apparently a culvert. There was another one on the other side of the road. And she said that her husband and mom, when she sent them the picture, just laughed and thought it was AI. But no, this was real. From all of us at The National, thanks for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.